Welcome, my friends, to the PlayStation 5 Professional Edition. So this, I'm very excited to take a look at because now we're going to unbox it, but we're also going to compare it to the existing PS5, the Xbox Series X, and we may, just maybe, tear it apart and see what's inside.
Tear apart the box first, because I'm a little skeptical.
What do you mean you're a little skeptical? So up front, they're very clear in calling out this as a disc-free console, which is exactly what I want when I spend $700 on a PlayStation that can't play discs. 2 TB, which is an improvement over the existing PS5. Seems pretty straightforward. Let's see here. God, that sounds so bad, dude. It's so... If there's a rock in here, I'm gonna be really mad. Inside we have... There we go, okay. So we have ourselves a regular figure 8 power cable. We also have a USB C-to-C cable. We have an HDMI cable. Wow, great packaging. It's just all tossed in here. And we do have a DualSense, which unfortunately this is not the DualSense Edge. This is just the regular DualSense. Oh, that's why it's rattling. Here's our stand. The PS5 Pro stand, much like the PS5 Slim, it's just 2 little pieces of plastic that cost like 1 cent each. Okay, oh, it's a tall boy. So it looks very similar to the PS5 Slim, but it is significantly taller. It's actually like surprisingly light though. Oh, it's sharp too, what the hell?
Whoa!
That's actually sharp.
You can actually cut yourself off.
You can absolutely
like if you're not paying attention at least.
And I will tell you that while you've got these little vents on the side, they're not actual vents. Yes, my friends, don't adjust your phone screens. I'm in fact reading a manual.
You can read?
They specifically call out the fact that it's got an 8-core Zen 2 CPU and a 16.7 teraflop GPU. That puts it at what? 55–60% more graphics performance than the stock PS5. One of the only things I've noticed is different on the PS5 Pro so far is if you go into the screen and video settings, there's a new 8K output mode. So I don't have an 8K TV to test with, but theoretically you can enable that. Some games will support 8K, it's kind of a small number right now, but that's technically an option. What I think is a little more interesting is enhancing image quality for PS4 games. So the TLDR here is that PS4 games, typically when you're running on a PS5, the PS5 slows itself down to run at the same sort of spec as the PS4, so you get the same performance. But with the PS5 Pro, you can essentially uncap it, let it run at full beans, and depending on the game, you may or may not get a little bit of extra performance, unlocked frame rate, that kind of thing. You can just hear that fan cranking. And I'm just in the menu right now. I will mention that I am recording this before the official on-sale date of the PS5 Pro, which means that a lot of games are getting patches for the PS5 Pro, but they're coming out in sort of a little bit of a staggered timeline. Like for example, Gran Turismo 7, that patch doesn't come out for, was it like 2 months or something?
A couple of weeks. They update every end of month.
So for Black Ops 6, I've run all 3 consoles at 60 instead of 120 hertz. I've done that consistently across the board.
If anything, this might be a little more representative of what you can expect for unoptimized games.
That's exactly right. This is, while Black Ops 6 will get a patch to support PS5 Pro soon, this right now is an example of an unoptimized game to see where we're at power number wise and just general performance. So this will be the point where we're gonna do our power testing. So while we're standing on this ridge, we're getting 217, 220, 216.
Okay,
That's, wait.
That's lower.
That's lower than the PS5 Slim. So let's go ahead and move over to a game that actually is optimized, which is F1 24.
Now would be a great time to remind you to please subscribe to the channel for high quality content such as Austin sitting in front of a kilowatt telling you how fast PS5 is.
You don't see your mouth.
So I'm curious, F1 does already have the patch live for the PS5 Pro, so it's already optimized. Quality setting shows you got visual quality and ray tracing at 60, and then you can also go to performance, which goes to 120 hertz, but I don't think has any or very little ray tracing during the normal gameplay. By looking at the, I can immediately see the ray traced graphics.
I know you're doing this for the sake of consistency on your test, but I was playing this earlier for my video.
Yeah.
And with the rain, it looks so good.
So for context, the Xbox Series X in that test did 183 watts, the PS5 Slim 230, and the PS5 Pro 246. So it definitely takes more power, but actually a surprisingly small extra bit of power. All right, let me go ahead and keep racing for a second. Let's go ahead and do a little sound test. So everyone stop talking, mostly me. Okay, well, I think we'll call that about 42 decibels. So again, if I compare that to the Series X, it's a lot louder. So, I mean, we're not talking huge numbers, but the Series X, we got 37 dB in F1. I will mention that the PS5 Slim though, that fan was actually kind of ramping up and down as we went. So 38 was one of the lower numbers. It did kind of go up to the 40s, but it was just kind of moving up and down. This fan though, we got 42, so it is louder than the PS5. I can almost believe that this is gonna be the exact same setup or a very similar setup that the PS5 Slim has, because this is not that much bigger. It's not pulling that much more power. We're looking at 4 to 5 dB louder than a regular PS5 or a Series X, so it's not exactly great. Let's do a little thermal test, shall we? Ken, will you be so kind as to rip some laps for me while I thermal test?
Some laps?
Rip some laps. So I'm gonna say it's about 46 degrees Celsius on the exhaust, which is pretty close to what we're getting on the PS5, which is 48, as well as Series X, which was also 48. So initial thoughts, it runs a little bit louder, about the same temperature on the exhaust, and we're only talking an extra, 16 watts of power over the regular PS5. That's not a big difference. Now, I'm gonna try to take the panels off without scratching it. I've torn a lot of PS5s apart, and I always scratch them on a very regular basis.
Yeah,
Ooh.
there you go.
It still doesn't feel good. I've done it a lot of times. It still does not feel good. So under this part, we have not only the fan, but we also have our SSD, which I'm gonna just pop open to see. Okay, yep. So exactly like the original PS5 as well as the Slim, there's one single screw and one single panel that sort of keeps you away from the SSD. I hate it so much. All right. This is, of course, a digital-only console, but if you purchase the disk drive, it should theoretically just pop on like this. And then this is a disk drive I just pulled off our PS5 Slim, and there you go. And then this should pop on like this, right? You can get a quick look at what the PS5 Pro looks like with the disk drive. Wow, that's ugly. Wow, I kind of see why they didn't ship it like that. Wow, that is
also very rude.
So I'm just gonna try. Can I put on a regular PS5 faceplate? I don't think this is supposed to work, but it looks like it's not far off. Not by a lot, but it is slightly bigger. So basically, if you want to buy faceplates for the PS5 Pro, you're gonna have to get slightly different ones, because the bottom one works for the actual disk drive, but the top is ever so slightly bigger. The only other thing I'm seeing here is that there's an additional little screw, which I think is where the button cell battery is held. So on the PS5, both the Slim as well as the original, if you want to get to the actual button cell, you have to tear the entire console apart. There you go, so you can easily get at the battery. This is important because this battery is what's going to run things like the clock and whatnot. So it will be good for a long time, but eventually it will die. And at that point, your PS5 is gonna get all kinds of grumpy, the clock doesn't match, it gets really upset about a lot of things in life. So the fact that you can easily swap that battery, that is a big win for repairability and just keeping your console healthy, not having to tear it all the way down, swap the world's tiniest battery. God, it's like physically painful to take these shells off. Like, it just sounds so bad. So this is very easy to get into at this point, right? You're popping it off. We've used a couple of Phillips screws and that's it. From this point, we're going to start going into voiding warranty land. Well, depending on who you talk to at least. So we'll just actually start by doing the fan. So again, just like with the PS5 Slim, there's a little plastic protector here over where the fan connects. So you can take that off and just disconnect the fan itself, and we should be able to swap the fan out really easily. So the 4 screws removed and our cable disconnected, I think this fan should just pull out. And that looks very similar to the PS5 Slim. In fact, so the fans are almost the exact same. Now I would say that the PS5 Pro fan, if I put it on the table here, it's ever so slightly taller. But besides that, it's the exact same circumference. It looks like about the same design of the blades, and they are interchangeable. So I could just drop the PS5 Slim fan in the PS5 Pro. Now, because these blades are just slightly taller and it runs at like 0.1 amps more, it's probably gonna move just a little bit more air. But based on our thermal testing, it only was pulling what, like another 16 watts?
It's like the boomerang from the first gen.
There we go. With our trim piece removed, we should be able to see. Okay, that looks so similar, dude. That is so similar to the PS5 Slim. So for a quick comparison, this is the backside of the motherboard on the PS5 Pro. You can see we've got 2 heat pipes that run all the way around. If I put that with the PS5 Slim overlaid, you'll see that it's very similar, but the PS5 Slim only has a single heat pipe. So definitely a very similar design, just slightly plussed up for the PS5 Pro. Oh, that's cute. So the little CMOS daughter board just pulls off. It's just held in by these little nubbins. What's wrong with nubbins? Nubbins is a perfectly legitimate word that I can use whenever I want. Okay, at this point, I just gotta undo a whole bunch of little screws. Like, I don't even wanna count that many. Wait, this whole heatsink is just not even on here. Wait, okay, so this is something different. I was just gonna blast through it, but there's 2 screws underneath this heatsink that I didn't realize. Whoa, oh, it just does come off. Okay, got it. So, fun fact, you have to take off this heatsink, which is apparently just held on with a little bit of thermal paste. Okay, and I think this is our last of very, very many screws holding the motherboard in. Now, just like the PS5 Slim, there's also this little connector here, which I believe is for some of the ports or something, but regardless, I think you need to pick up the little metal retention bracket. Okay, so we've got ourselves the motherboard itself, which looks beefier than the PS5, but I'll put that off to the side for 1 second, because we do have a big old power supply right here. So looking at the power supply, as you can see that the PS5 Pro is just physically larger. So this is a 372 watt power supply for the PS5 Slim, whereas we got a 420 watt power supply on the PS5 Pro. So for context, just looking at the coolers, this is the PS5 Slim and this is the PS5 Pro. The PS5 Pro is absolutely a very close cousin to the PS5 Slim. Yes, we have a bigger heatsink here, so we have 7 heat pipes instead of 5. It's got a little bit more mass when it comes to the cooler. Certainly it has a bigger sort of rear heat pipe setup compared to the PS5 Slim, but it's very, very similar looking. There we go. That's okay, that's okay. That's a good noise. So we've got ourselves, oh my God, yeah. You wonder what was holding it on. Every bit of thermal, it's more thermal compound than aluminum on here. Good Lord.
Jeez, how are we gonna put that back on?
So now, again, just like the PS5 Slim, there's this little retention bracket on the bottom side, which has 2 screws. I think we're basically there now at this point. So again, PS5 Slim on the left and PS5 Pro on the right, they look very similar. So you can see our SSD controller and our NAND, our 16 gigs of GDDR6, which is routed around the APU, which looks exactly the same as on the PS5 Slim. The big difference I see here though is with this extra little module right here, which I'm pretty certain is our 2 gigabytes of DDR5. So on the PS5 Slim, 16 gigs is shared between your OS, your background tasks and whatnot, and the games themselves. Whereas on the PS5 Pro, all your OS, all that kind of stuff is gonna run on this 2 gigabyte module, which means that your 16 gigs should be theoretically entirely freed up for games. Your GTA 6 will have 4 different kinds of cars running around instead of 3. Just listen to the sound as it peels itself off the board.
Okay, that I heard, yes. It sounds like wet paint.
Behold, my friends, our PS5 Pro motherboard and chip, and that is just literally a larger chip. Same kind of deal, we've already taken off the little thermal pad for the PS5 Slim, so you can see that it normally has all the liquid metal on top. That liquid metal is contacted with the actual heatsink here. It could be 5 nanometer. I'll be honest, I don't know if it's 5 nanometer or not. But I physically, well yes, I will measure it. But I cannot measure the nanometers with my, that would be really impressive if I could look and go, no, yeah, 279. Wow, wait, hold on a second. My rough math here, and keep in mind I'm using these calipers, so it's accurate-ish, but I wouldn't, I'd wanna actually fully tear everything apart to be sure. The PS5 Slim, according to my measurement here, is 271 millimeters squared. The PS5 Pro is 279 millimeters squared. That is almost the same. This actually might be a 5 nanometer chip. I don't know how else they would be able to essentially make the chip the exact, or almost the same size, right? Very, very close, and fit that much more performance in it. It's hard for me to imagine another situation that this is not a 5 nanometer chip. Which would make sense why it's $700, because I'll be honest with you, the rest of this sort of overall layout is very similar to the PS5 Slim and the earlier PS5s. Yeah, probably a few dollars more here in copper, a few more dollars here and a slightly bigger fan or whatever, but there's not $200 more anywhere here, even with the extra SSD, which would add something to it. So there's some slight upgrades to repairability with the CMOS battery, which is available without having to tear the entire motherboard apart. But really the mystery is just what this chip is. I can't understand any other way that they would get this very reasonable power consumption in a chip which is almost the same size and with a way, way bigger GPU. But for that, I guess that'll be a mystery that we'll solve another day. If you enjoyed this video, definitely be sure to subscribe to the channel, ring-a-ling that ding-a-ling button, and stay tuned. The Switch 2 will be out soon, right? I guess tear that one apart too?